Hey everybody, welcome back to A Mama and Her Cookies. I am Micah and we are here. Today I am going to introduce you to my cookie. But today's video is all about how we got this little girl here. So I will tell you the whole story, and let me warn you, it is a little bit long, but I promise the story will be worth it because our little girl is so cute. And I know all parents say that, but we are not kidding. Everybody we talk to says that she is gorgeous. So we're gonna try and fly through this because, like I said, it is a little bit of a long story. So on the Sunday after my due date, I started having some contractions that felt pretty recognizable as like contractions. They weren't hurting yet, but they were a little bit uncomfortable. So I just started timing them and said, wow, what the heck? And they were ranging between like 4 minutes and 25 minutes, just totally sporadic, but I was excited because my body was actually starting to do something. On Monday, they kind of stalled out. I didn't notice very much, but I was also busy doing other things, so I may not have been paying a lot of attention to them. We went in for a 41-week appointment where they were going to do a non-stress test to make sure that the baby is doing okay and everything was going great and I could just keep going until she decided to come. If you haven't seen my other video about inducing labor, go check out that video. It may not work for you because it didn't work super well for me. She still came exactly when she wanted to. So at 9 a.m. on the 10th, on Tuesday, we went in for this non-stress test. They hooked me up to a monitor, started monitoring the baby's heart rate, and I had a little clicker that I could click every time I felt her move. Well, she was like taking a nap, I'm pretty sure, and so we didn't get a lot of movements out of her, but the movements they did get were a little bit distressing looking. So they look at the heart rate, they want to see it spike up when your baby moves and then drop down to a baseline. But what hers was doing is it was spiking up, dropping below the baseline, and then normalizing back up to the baseline. So that's not something that they wanted to see. So she sent us away for a little while. We went up to Salt Lake and we went on a walk with my mom, and she said to come back later on, maybe when she was more awake and we could get some better readings. Well, we went back and sweet little babe failed her second non-stress test. And so the midwife said that she'd really prefer to get her here sooner rather than later. So we started looking at some induction options such as the membrane sweep. When she went to go check, my cervix wasn't dilated enough to do a membrane sweep, and so she actually ended up just inserting a Foley catheter, which at that point I was only like 1.5 centimeters dilated, but I was 50% effaced, which she was pretty excited about. So it looked like my body was progressing naturally towards labor, but we really just needed to make sure that she got here quicker. So instead of a membrane sweep, she inserted a Foley catheter into my uterus through my cervix and filled it up. They also call it a balloon, I think. Filled it up with like 6 syringes of water. It was not too uncomfortable, but it was once she pulled on the catheter, like the tubing part, and then taped it to my leg. So it's basically meant to forcibly dilate your cervix, which hopefully would, you know, start labor going. I was actually really excited because this meant that we were getting our baby soon, that things were really happening, and I was just like mostly excited about it. So that was at about 1 o'clock on Tuesday. We planned for 3 membrane sweeps the next day. We were serious about getting this baby here. We went in for our 41-week appointment today, non-stress test. Turns out maybe there's a little bit of stress. Baby's heart rate would spike with movement and then dip below baseline. We want the spike but not the dip. She kind of failed the first time, so we went on a walk, tried to kind of move things around, see if she would cooperate a little more. Went back and retested, and she failed again, and during a contraction her heart rate really dropped. And so they're thinking I'm gonna get her here as soon as possible. So I had a cervical check. I was at 1.5 centimeters dilated and 50% effaced, so that was pretty good, but not enough to do like a really effective membrane sweep. So we are going to hang out right now. I've got a Foley catheter in, which if you don't know what that is, you're living a blessed life. So hopefully that gets us dilated enough to where we can start seeing some progress, and tomorrow we have 3 membrane sweeps on the agenda. Hopefully she comes before then. And I'm really having to breathe through some of this stuff. It is like extreme menstrual cramps, lots of back pain, like lower back pain. And yeah, so that's where we're at now. It is 2 o'clock on the 10th. So we headed out. We went to Walmart to pick up a couple of extra groceries. At that point, I was pretty feeling like in a lot of pain. I didn't necessarily feel any contractions, but it did feel like some pretty serious menstrual cramps and just general tightness, I guess. So at about 2:30 or so, we went to the chiropractor. That was a little bit painful trying to get up onto the table with a catheter strapped to my leg. It was just, please, if you can avoid it, don't get a catheter and then go to the chiropractor. All right, we've been home for a little while. There goes the air conditioning. And I finished packing up the birth bag, took a shower, and basically I've been like stuck doing nothing else because these contractions are coming like pretty frequently. I would say like 5 minutes apart. They've been like between, some of them have been like, feels like 2.5 minutes apart. I don't know, maybe I feel like I'm like recording them wrong, but that is where we're at. So I just let my midwives know the balloon catheter thing came out within like just like maybe 2 or 3 hours of it being put in. So ideally I am like 4 centimeters dilated already and at least 50% effaced. So we will see how that goes. We're gonna check it again tomorrow morning. And I'm pretty positive I lost my mucus plug as well with the catheter. We got home at like 3. I went to the bathroom and lost the balloon. It came right out, which it was supposed to. We were wanting that. And it meant that at this point I was about 4 centimeters dilated. So we were really excited. Things seemed to be progressing really quickly. And I quickly texted my midwife and I said, okay, the catheter came out, so we're having a baby tonight, right? And she's like, I wouldn't count on it, but like, just keep us updated. I also think that I lost my mucus plug at this point, but I'm not super sure because I've never lost a mucus plug before. Honestly, it was like a huge relief. All of that pressure on my cervix was obviously gone at this point, but the contractions did return. We did dinner and I was rating my pain at like maybe a 7. A 7 for what I thought that it was at that point. I had no idea what a 7 felt like until later on. So what I probably was at was like a 4, but I felt like a total champ because I was like breathing through the contractions and really like not tensing my face or anything. Everything was awesome. I laid down to take a nap and then my parents came over and we were chatting with them. Around 8:30 though, my contractions were starting to be like 2 minutes apart. And for my midwife, she wanted me to call and like start coming in at about 4 minutes in between my contractions, lasting at least a minute, lasting for an hour. Well, these were like not necessarily lasting for a minute, but they'd been lasting for like an hour and a half and they weren't painful. But because we had, you know, kind of a scare with the non-stress test, I wanted to be completely sure that our baby was okay. And also that I didn't like accidentally have my baby like here at home or something. So she told us, go ahead, come in, we'll check on the baby. All right, it is 10 o'clock. And we are headed to the birth center. The contractions are pretty close, and just with everything that's been going on, we don't want to risk anything. So I'm not real keen to give birth on the side of the road if we can avoid that. So we are heading in, and hopefully everything will go really well. Contractions are about 3 minutes apart, so we'll see. And as we headed to the birth center, I was telling Devrin, I think maybe I'll anticipate being at like a 6 or something when she checks me. Like it's been a couple of hours, but I know for sure I was at a 4 before. So, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up being like too far along. And I think we're still probably in like the beginning stages because I can breathe through these and they're like really like not very painful at all. The car ride was pretty uncomfortable and the contractions started spacing back out to about 5 minutes apart. By the time we got to the birth center, the assistant midwife kind of looked at me and was like, oh my gosh, why are you here? I don't know if she actually said that. No, I don't think she did. She didn't actually say that, but I could tell that she maybe wasn't taking me very seriously. And she did a cervical check and told me I was at an 8. I was like, oh my gosh, no way. Okay, so I'm in transition right now. I am like a total champ. I've got this labor thing down. So it wasn't super awesome that her heart rate was like okay, but not great. But it didn't matter because we were positive that our baby was gonna be here by like 3 a.m. So at 11 o'clock, we got settled into our room at the birth center. We were just so excited.
We are here about to have this baby.
Overall, feeling pretty good. Feeling like a champ because midwife did not think that I was as progressed as I was. Because I've been taking it like a champ. Oh yeah, I'm 8 centimeters. I labored for several hours there. The contractions were like about 2 minutes apart still. At one point I felt like I needed to throw up. I was feeling a little bit nauseous, which I was super excited about still because that means that you're in transition and like you're about to have your baby. So we moved to the tub around like 1 or 2 a.m. At this point on Wednesday morning. We were really excited. I was feeling super good. It was very relaxing, but gradually my contractions started kind of slowing down. After a while, I said I almost felt like pushing, like not just yet, but a lot of pelvic pressure. And I could see how like at some point pushing would feel pretty good. And I was thinking that was gonna be like pretty soon. The assistant midwife checked around 3 o'clock and she said that we were not progressing. The baby was not dropping at all. And my contractions had slowed quite a bit. So she thinks being in the tub for so long had actually kind of slowed my labor. And at that point I was like pretty tired. It was definitely past my bedtime. A lot of pressure and like almost the urge to push. So we will see where we go. The contractions have like slowed down and de-intensified, distensified, how do you say that? So we might get out of the bath here in a minute and try and get them back going again. She told us to take advantage of the break and the sporadic contractions and try and just go lay down on the bed and take a nap. So we did that for a couple of hours, but by the time the sun was coming up, we were awake too. We kept laboring. It seemed like if I was laying down or like resting, the contractions would slow down again. And as soon as I got up and started walking around, I'd get hit over and over again with them. So I was honestly kind of like trying to avoid them. Like nobody wants to have contractions. So I was just like taking breaks on the bed a lot or like sitting down. Or so around 8 a.m. the main midwife came and she said, "Hey, do you mind if I check you? It seems like kind of things aren't really like happening." And I said, "No worries, go ahead, check." And she said that I was at a 6. I was like, what the heck? Are you kidding me? A 6? So I've been laboring here all night and I just went like down 2 centimeters. I just digressed. And she said, well, probably what happened was your baby was literally so high up and not engaged at all in your pelvis last night that it's easier to kind of like make it an 8 versus now she had dropped just a little bit and it was really just a 6. She was like, you're probably at a 6 the whole time. I was so discouraged. I was like, so I've been literally just like sitting here in pain for nothing, for no reason. And like our baby is overdue. She's supposed to be here at 3 a.m. last night. Or I guess this morning. She's supposed to be here at 3 a.m. this morning. At that point, the baby's heart tones were still doing like, okay, not great. But the really concerning thing was that she was not descending. They said they checked her and that she was kind of in like a bad position, I guess. We realized later that probably the cord had wrapped around her somewhere, whether on her neck or on a foot or something like that. And that is kind of keeping her, she's getting tangled up in there, is keeping her from descending, which was keeping me from dilating very much, which was keeping us from meeting this little baby. So they broke out the Rebozo. And if you've worked with one of these, you probably either love it or hate it. I hated it, my husband hated it, but we actually really loved it because it got our baby into position. So it's basically a really long cloth that you wrap around like a hammock in your belly. I was on all 4s and then Devrin grabbed the 2 tails of it and he shook like this for about an hour straight. He was exhausted, I was exhausted. It like kept on putting like little stitches in my side. I was like very uncomfortable. But after about an hour, we did an ultrasound and checked her positioning and she was free. It was so great. So she was back in a great position. They checked me again and I was at 7 centimeters, which I was really hoping it was gonna be like 10 or something at that point, but you know, we'll take a centimeter when we can get it, and about 80% effaced. I was like not really progressing at all. I was still at an 8 at like, what time was that? Like 3 something, I don't even know. And so they had us, they checked and saw that she was in like, I think she was in a posterior position. I wasn't super sure on that. And so they did the Rebozo, basically like shook her around to try and get her to turn back again. And I had to do a bunch of hands and knees stuff. And then they let me sleep, which was really nice. Except for the contractions during sleep were like the worst. Yeah, so I just emptied my bowels and my stomach. So we should be golden here anytime soon. I'm ready. So we were really excited about her position being really good. We were eager to find out if her heart rate was okay as well, because pretty much if she wasn't progressing, we were gonna have to go to the hospital, which no judgment for people who go to the hospital, but that is not for me. And I was so not excited to go to the hospital, especially under some like unfavorable circumstances. So we did another non-stress test and she passed. So it turns out she was probably wrapped for a long time, which makes sense because she wasn't dropping even for the weeks leading up to the delivery. So we were super excited that her heart rate was great. Her non-stress test was passed. This part's like super fuzzy in my brain because literally like most of Wednesday, I just felt like I was in and out of contractions the whole time. I had no idea what time it was, what was going on, and like it was just like super messy. So anyway, since she passed her non-stress test, the midwife actually suggested us to go home because labor was like so slow. We were really like at that point kind of like not in labor. I had ended up taking like a 45-minute nap. We'd watched a movie, like things were just like not moving along. So she said, go home, get some rest. We'll pick stuff up in the morning. Maybe we'll do like a membrane sweep in the morning. Well, that was super discouraging to me. I was so disappointed because I felt like I'd labored this whole time for absolutely nothing. I was still only at a 7 and like not even fully effaced, and my baby wasn't coming and like wasn't even like descending. Ugh, I was so frustrated. So I said, can we try just a couple more induction techniques here? And like, I'm just gonna like will myself into having this baby right now. So we went out on some walks. We got moving a lot. We tried every single different position, all of the ways to like bring your baby down and help your baby descend and all of this stuff. We did this horrible tincture, whatever, this like dropper liquid full of, I think it was blue cohosh. It was awful. I think there's like a lot of ginger in it. It burned my throat going down. Turns out I was actually supposed to stick it under my tongue and then swallow it. I didn't do that. And then we did breast pumping during a movie. So she came back in, said, hey, seems like none of this is really working. I think you probably ought to go home. And so Devin convinced me of it. We decided to go home, and I had about 4 contractions on the way home, which is like a 40-minute drive. So they were about 10 minutes apart, pretty slow still. They felt like they were really strong, but nobody cared at that point, I guess. I was just feeling so discouraged because I was already thinking that like I wasn't handling labor very well. I was exhausted. I'd been doing this for like, at that point, 24 hours. I was so tired. And all of the thoughts that I was having, I felt like were thoughts to be having during transition, not like at 6 or 7 centimeters. I felt like I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to give up. I just wanted to take a nap. Evidently, those are supposed to be feelings that you have right before it's like go time for your baby. And I knew that we had several hours ahead of us still. Like I wanted it to be over, but I didn't want to go to the hospital, but I knew I couldn't just like take a nap and wake up and have a baby. Although that would be nice. Let's have somebody figure out how we can do that. Just kidding. I don't want to do that. I felt like I would be miserable at home too. I already wasn't like coping well. None of my techniques were working. All of my nice like relaxed, calm face, breathing through my contractions, all of that kind of stuff like was not happening anymore. I was tensing up a lot. I was really feeling like in a lot of pain. Although some people say they can have a pain-free birth, I was like really just in pain. And ultimately I felt like going home was just admitting to myself and everybody else that this baby was not coming anytime soon and that my journey was far from over.
So this is me and my sleepy almost mom wife, Micah, heading home with, as you can see, an empty car seat because we do not have a baby yet, despite having spent the last 16 or so hours at the birthing center because of a whole bunch of stuff that went on about like potentially a cord being twisted around, and I had to use this awesome like shaking maneuver skills that I learned to like unstick her and tumble her around. And anyway, now she's doing great, which is awesome. But also Micah's not really so much in active labor anymore, so we're thinking last night, you know, maybe we kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but we had reason to because of the whole like non-stress test thing that she failed. And so we want to make sure she was good, but now she's super good because I did my whole jiggle thing and I fixed her. And yeah, so now we're going back because Micah's gonna sleep, and she might sleep for 6 hours and wake up and be like, oh my gosh, there's a head. Or she might wake up in the morning and then who knows, but we're headed home. So this whole birthing center saga shall be continued in version 2.0, which is happening actually like right now.
Literally as soon as we got home, I went straight to bed and I tried to sleep between these contractions, but oh my gosh, they were like 10 minutes apart, but they were lasting for like a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes. They were like super intense. So I slept for a good like 7 hours or so, just kind of on and off. I'd sleep and then I'd wake up with a contraction. I'd hit the contraction timer and roll out of bed onto all fours and just try and breathe through. But especially as we got towards like 10 o'clock or so, it was feeling really, really intense. And everything that you're not supposed to do, I was doing. My shoulders were tense, every muscle in my body just like could not relax. I was distorting my face like crazy because everything just hurt so bad. My noises were not the nice, like calm, low, like animal, whatever they tell you in all these birthing classes. Like I was probably like not screaming, but I definitely had some like really high pitched like, you know, like I was not having it. So I woke Devin up at around 10 o'clock or so, telling him I needed counter pressure because I could not make it through. At this point, I was like totally out of my mind. I really wanted everything to stop to end. I just wanted to go sleep and like not have to deal with this anymore. Turns out this was probably real transition. I would say at that point, my pain was really actually at a 7, maybe actually an 8 or 9 at that point. They were very, very, very painful, but I was super frustrated. I did not think that I was in transition because they were still like 10 minutes apart. So we got up, I went to the bathroom. He was helping me with counter pressure in the bathroom. So while we were in the bathroom, I decided, okay, everything is tensing already. I might as well just focus on something to tense. And so I switched over to almost like a pushing sort of sensation where I relaxed the rest of my body, but tensed up my abs and focused on like opening up my pelvic floor. This is something I learned from Becky at Good for the Swole. Super helpful. I practiced it for like the last 2 months of my pregnancy. And so I knew exactly what to do. Within a couple of contractions, it went from, let's see, I have it written down here. This was at 11 p.m., 8 minutes apart, 6 minutes apart, 3, 5, 1.5, 3, 1 and 45 seconds, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and my water broke. These were like super, super intense contractions. They were lasting like 1.5 to 2 minutes, which is like not very long when it's only 1 minute and 45 seconds apart. That pushing felt so nice because it was something that I could control. Immediately after my water broke, I felt a lot of pressure. I was like, okay, so this is what it's supposed to feel like to have your baby's head descend actually and push on your cervix. So I was really excited. I had Devin call the midwife and she said, oh, if your water broke, then we definitely want to have you come in. Go ahead and start heading up. And I'm in the middle of a contraction, laying on the bathroom counter saying, I don't think I can make it. I don't think I'm gonna make it. And because midwives are usually really awesome at this, she could hear in my voice that I probably was not gonna make it. So she said, okay, hold off on pushing for a little bit, which I totally laughed at. I was like, no, that's what just started feeling good. I'm not stopping pushing. She said she was gonna send a midwife that was a little bit closer and she was heading down right away. I thought I was fine being at home because the contractions had been like 10 minutes apart, so we were going to not like jump the gun again and show up. I don't think we jumped the gun really, but we weren't gonna show up to the birthing center like way too early again. So I was waiting until they were actually 4 or maybe even 3 minutes apart, and then we were gonna go in. But I was thinking at that point it was way too intense for me to try and go all the way 40 minutes up to the birthing center. So Devin started the tub, I kept pushing.
All right, welcome to this episode of Devin's giving birth to his child. Here's Micah in the bathtub. Her water just broke spontaneously. Midwife's on the way. And we should be having this baby here soon. How are you feeling?
The water's cold. About 20 minutes later, the other midwife that we didn't know showed up and she was a doll. She was super helpful. At this point though, I really, really needed Devin's counter pressure and his help and support and like just presence with me. I was in the tub, but he was like busy helping give people Wi-Fi passwords and like setting things up. When we first moved here, we only got 1 set of towels because it's just the 2 of us and we have a small house and we really like to be minimalist. And it turns out that maybe like we needed way more towels than just 2. My baby. So when I was planning for my birth, I wanted to have an upright, forward, and open position per my Hypnobirthing course. Go check it out if you want to go check it out. Check it out because the course is awesome. It really helps you feel prepared for everything that labor and childbirth brings. So I wanted an upright, forward, open position to help reduce my tearing. Also, that's why I did a water birth. So I labored for a while, kind of like leaning over the tub on my knees, and like I was feeling really good. At one point, they wanted to check her position, I think is what it was. And so my midwife had me lean backwards against Devin, kind of in his arms. Either that ended up feeling super good, or I just really was exhausted enough that I didn't want to move from that position. And so I ended up just kind of like semi-reclined with my legs kind of open. When she checked though, she saw that she was descending, which was really awesome. At that point, I had so much lower back pain. I think probably just because I'd been laboring for 24, no, it had been more than that. Yeah, at that point I had been laboring for like 33 or so hours. So I was exhausted. Lower back pain was crazy. And I was getting so many Charlie horses in like my hamstrings and my calves because I would kind of push against the walls of the bathtub with each contraction. Another thing that the prenatal courses recommend, and I was totally gonna do, was this whole idea of like just breathing your baby out, everything really gentle and like no like purple face pushing, which is what they call it, because I really did not want to tear at all. But it turns out that did not feel good. I tried it a couple of times to just kind of like breathe and like not push, but your instincts are so strong in that moment. Like I really just needed to like push. At that point, it was super terrifying. I was like in a total panic and the pain was just really overwhelming. I just kept on saying like, make it go away. I don't want it. I felt like I wanted to just like jump out of my body in that moment because it was so intense. It was so like overwhelming, so scary. My midwives were really, really helpful though. And they said to take that energy and take that like, I don't know what the word they used, but like all of that fear and that panic and like all of that energy and focus it downward and like really try and like push from the top to the bottom and basically like push as hard as you can. They had me take a really big breath at the beginning of a contraction and then hold it as I pushed as hard as I could and then like let it go and then do it again as many times as I could during a contraction. That was actually feeling like pretty not good. I mean, like pushing a baby out doesn't feel good, but that felt like something I could really focus on. So I totally grabbed hold of that. The totally bummer part about this is Devon had the camera set up. Everything was wonderful. And at some point while I was laying on him, the camera died. We all heard it. And in the moment I was like, it doesn't even matter. I need you right here with me, Devon. Like I need your support. Don't even worry about going and switching out the battery on the camera. Looking back, I totally wish that I would have been like, fine letting him leave for like 2 minutes. It's not like it was hard. So we don't actually have any footage of her actual birth, but I will tell you all about it. So working in contractions in this way was really helpful. I would take a recovery breath. I would push to like make up all of the lost ground because with pushing, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or maybe it's like 1 step back, 2 steps forward. Maybe it's 2 steps back, 1 step forward. I don't know, whatever the phrase is. You lose a little bit of the ground and then you push again and she comes out further and then she slides back in. It's normal. That's how it's supposed to happen. It helps prevent tearing. So I would think to myself, okay, I'm gonna do 1 recovery breath to like get her back where she was. And then I'm gonna do at least 2 pushes to make sure that she gets like a good distance. Devon here was super, super helpful. He would really guide me through like my breaths, telling me I did a great job. I was really, really appreciating all of the cheerleading. I had my midwife there and the student there and Devon. And it was just like, it was so great to have like everybody just really believing in me and encouraging me to like do what my body was made to do. At this point, her heart tones were doing great. We were so excited about that because her position had changed after using the Rebozo and her non-stress test was great. We figured it would probably be okay, but it was just amazing to see that even through like the entire birthing process, like the birth, like the delivery, you know, she was doing really great. Another really cool thing that I was able to do was I actually personally checked her station to see how far descended she was and see what kind of progress she was making. And that was really motivating. So I reached up and I could actually feel her head and it was fuzzy and slimy. And I was just like so excited. Each time I checked, she was a little bit further down and it was just a really great way to have like kind of some milestones to hit. You know, they're like, okay, she's like 3 knuckles up, you know, she's like a whole finger up, or she's 2 knuckles up or 1 knuckle. And it was really just super neat. Pretty soon, Devon looked down and he was able to see her hair waving in the water. And he was like, what is that? And they're like, it's her hair. She has a lot of hair. She's really cute. My eyes were closed pretty much the whole time. I felt really zoned out for a lot of it, but Devon kept on saying things like, okay, I can see her hair, or like he touched her ear and he was like super excited about that. And so that really was like super motivating to help me keep going. At one point I thought I should ask how much longer before she like crowns or before she's here. And then I was like, no, actually that's a really bad idea because maybe they'd be like, oh yeah, you're like probably only 30 minutes away. And I was like, no, I already felt like I really wasn't sure I could do it much longer. But especially once we could see her head coming, I was like, you know what? she's coming and I don't have a choice. So she needs to come now. That gave me strength because I was in control of like when she came. Especially that last little bit of pushing. It felt like such an out of body experience. I know everybody says that, but it's really true. I was like so zoned out or like zoned in. I was like totally concentrated on what was going on, but like not in a very cognizant way. It was still very like subconscious. My body really took over. So like between contractions, I would like basically sleep or just like really focus on like slowing my breath again. Then a contraction would come and it would just be so instinctual. My body would just totally take over and everything was like automatic. I could not stop it if I tried to. Like I heard everything that was going on, but I did not have the energy to respond to anything except for when Devin said, just imagine if you hadn't worked out your whole pregnancy. And literally the thought of it was so miserable to me. I responded to him and I was like, I don't even want to think about that. So we're in the home stretch. We can see her as I'm pushing. I'm able to feel her fuzzy little head in my hand. It was so cute, so precious. I was just so ready to just keep on pushing, plow through, and just get her here. I actually didn't feel like it was like a ring of fire, not like that intense, but definitely all of my tissues were stretched as tight as they could go, and I felt like they really couldn't stretch any further. I felt like I should just like slow down at that point and kind of like pant through and like really let the slow crowning happen. But I also felt like it was totally out of my control. And also we were so close that I didn't really want to. I was like, you know what? If I tear, whatever. Like I just need to get this baby here because I need a nap right now. The next contraction, I pushed and her head literally just like popped out. Devin used to always joke when we were training for all of our runs here in Utah, we would run up these hills and he would tell me, don't worry, Micah, this is just gonna train you to pop that baby out like a cannonball. And I was always like, no, you don't want to pop the baby out like a cannonball because that's like, you're gonna tear everywhere and it's gonna be horrible. But really like this baby came out like a cannonball. Surprisingly, I didn't have any pain here, or at least none of it registered. I'm pretty positive there was some intense stuff going on downstairs, but I didn't feel it. I was like so ecstatic. I actually screamed. I was really excited because her head was out and like the hardest part was over. They said on the next push, her body would be out and I was like, okay, give me just a second. I'm gonna catch my breath really quick and then like, we're gonna do this. And so on the next one, I pushed her body out and the student midwife guided her out, put her right on my chest. She cried right away, which we were really excited about. Everyone wasn't able to catch her because he was obviously holding me, which he was okay about. And we said all of the cute little new parent phrases like, oh my gosh, she's so perfect. Oh, we're so glad you're here. We're so proud of you. Like, oh, it was so fun. Devin always jokes that I like snapped out of my trance right away. Like as soon as she was born, I was like awake, my eyes were open, I was like seeing things again. The cord was already white, so they asked if I needed to push, if I felt the need to push. And I was like, don't talk to me about pushing again. I'm not interested in pushing anything right now. And they're like, okay, well, it seems like maybe your placenta's ready to come. They kind of like tugged on it a little bit and I was like, ow, like that hurts. They're like, okay, so it is still attached. They're like, could you try and push for me? And I was like, okay, like one push. They're like, just a little one. And I pushed literally just like a little push and like basically the placenta was born right away. So Devin cut the cord since it was already white, which we were gonna do delayed cord clamping. Just wait until like the whole thing was white. They listened to her heart and then they asked her like, did you even check to see if it was actually a girl? I was like, nope, sure didn't. So we checked, she's a girl. She has 10 fingers, 10 toes. She's so cute. And then they sent her and Devin to bed and helped me get out. At that point, we were all pretty ready to be out of the tub because gross. After birth, like having a water birth is amazing, but it's also pretty gross. I mean, it's probably pretty gross like on a bed too, but as they helped me out of the tub, my labor shakes came back. Now I'd been having labor shakes kind of on and off the whole time. Just like, I don't know, I just kind of like felt a little bit chilly, but then I was just like shaking kind of. This was intense. My whole body was just like shaking like crazy. And so they wrapped a blanket around me and towel and everything. And they took me over to the bed. They checked my fundus to make sure that my uterus was going like back down to size and everything was like good. Checked my bleeding. They said everything looked really great. And then I held her again. She tried latching for breastfeeding. She did really good. And then they let me go take a shower while they checked her. It was so nice to be able to be at home actually and like shower in my own bathroom, have my own stuff. Like I took off my makeup. I took a picture. I like did all these things and like got back into my own bed, which I thought that like being at a birthing center would have been just like the same because they have a nice tub there, they have a bed. But I don't know, there was just something different about like not having to go back into the car 4 hours later, like after we were done and come home. She was 7 pounds, 10 ounces and 19 inches long. And during her check, they found actually like a posterior tongue tie and a mild lip tie. So they said it's not really like a super big deal if you want to get it checked out like later on. It's like you don't need to like rush to a doctor right now. I partially wish I would have, and I'll tell you all about that story in my postpartum video that will come out in a little bit. And everybody was like, okay, Micah, like, what do you want to eat? Let's get you some food. And honestly, like, I was so not interested in eating. The only thing that I had had since the very beginning of this video, at the very beginning, right after that dinner, I didn't eat really anything after that, except for I had a granola bar that I threw up later, and I had like half of a smoothie, and I still just really wasn't hungry. I wasn't actually interested in just like looking at my baby and saying like, oh, she's so cute, like let's just like stare at her. No, I just wanted everybody to leave and I wanted to go to sleep. I was so exhausted. I really had not had a good night's sleep since Monday night, basically. They did check me to see if I needed stitches. I had one like 1st-degree tear and a couple like baby tears. They chopped off something and didn't sew me up anywhere, which was really great because I really hate the idea of stitches anywhere ever. And I weighed myself. I lost 15 whole pounds in the whole birth process. So overall, what I have to say about this birth is it's great to make plans and it's wonderful to have all of your preferences spelled out, but it's also really good to have a very flexible mindset and be okay with things as they happen. Like, probably ideally I would have preferred not to have any cervical checks. I probably would have preferred not to do any membrane sweeps, which I guess we didn't end up doing, but I was okay with it at the time. And also like my mind not so much, but Devrin's mind was pretty closed off to the idea of a home birth, and we actually ended up loving it. So overall, we're just so grateful that she got here happy and healthy and safe and sound. And even if it took us 36 hours to get her here, it was basically 36 hours, I would say, with 3 full hours of pushing. She came out with a little bit of a cone head, but don't worry, it's all fixed now, and she looks awesome. So without further ado, here is Miss Adelaide. Here is our little Adelaide. Look at her hair. This is what was waving around in the bathtub. She's so cute. She makes only grumpy faces. I don't know what else to say about her. This is our little girl. So that's the story of how we got this little cookie here to a Mama and Her Cookies. Thanks for watching and have a balanced day.